touring with Elvis Costello recently?
Yeah, back in April, this European tour came up, which it was pretty good timing, because I'd just been sitting at home, so it was a good way to get back into it.
Looking back now, how important to your career was that early endorsement you got from Elvis?
I think it was. I think it was very much needed at that time, because my record was just kind of dying a slow death, and and he came along and started speaking about it, and up till that point, I don't think it had even got outside of America, and in Canada. So, and it was really in Europe and all these other places, in Japan and Australia, where, it just seemed to. It's not that I've sold a lot there, but it just seems like the press lifted it up, and I was able to kind of have a career,
Yeah. Other than that, though, aside from that, there hasn't really always been a great deal of media hype behind your success. It's been more of a natural thing, almost a word of mouth. Has that helped you in terms of feeling less pressure upon you to come up with the goods?
I'm pretty hard on myself anyway. Sorry, just stepped on the cat by accident there. No, I'm pretty hard on myself in general. So I always feel the pressure every time I make a record, and in a way I always feel like I'm starting over, because the records aren't really that well known to the general public,
Mm-hmm.
But I feel fortunate that it has happened in a natural way, that the people, I just feel that they're into it, and hopefully they'll give each record a fair spin or whatever,
Looking back when you were growing up getting into music, was there a uniform quality, do you think, in your musical influences, the artists that you looked up to?
I guess the main thing I always was drawn to was music that had a strong melody, all my heroes, from the Beatles to Ray Davies, even, Gordon Lightfoot, I always thought he had a really great way with a melody. That was always important to me. And as I got a little bit older, out of my teens into my 20s, lyrics started to get a bit more, important, and I tried to take my time and get better at it. That's still the hardest part for me.
You mentioned Gordon Lightfoot. Who are some of the other Canadian songwriters that you really took to in those days?
Well, Leonard Cohen was definitely one of them. I always liked Neil Young and Joni Mitchell, but I never really owned any of their records until recent years. But Gordon Lightfoot was someone that I don't know. I always had a kind of a special place for him. And I go see him every year at Massey Hall, and I'm always talking about him, because I think I hear him more than almost anybody else in my music.
Yeah. Now, in your early days, you took on some non-musical employment, I guess, to get by, pay the bills, so to speak.
Yes.
Was it difficult maintaining a focus on developing your musical craft because you were tied up with these other things?
Not so much. The longest job that I ever held was when I was a courier, and that was actually custom made for a songwriter, because I had all day to walk around by myself, and I'm the kind of guy who tends to write songs just walking around, because when I've got a little rhythm going, I start to sing to myself and everything, and so I wrote hundreds of songs. Most of the songs on the first album, in fact, were written on that job.
All right.
Ever since then, it's actually been harder to write since I've been full-time in music, because I have to try to be disciplined and make the most of whatever downtime I have to get the job done.
Now, you got the deal with Interscope. That was a long-term deal, wasn't it, to begin with?
Yeah, I'm still. No one can ever give me a straight answer, But I think I was signed originally for like 6 records, and I don't know. I don't really know if it's going to go that far. I have to see. Because with the merger especially, they tend to be about the bottom line, and I think it's harder for them to be creative on something that's not a surefire hit, So I don't really know I'm waiting to find out if this is going to go to a fourth record or fifth. I'm not really concerned about it. I'm just happy to have survived 3 records,
It's a label that doesn't necessarily house a lot of artists of your type, really. Has that been a help or a hindrance, do you think?
Well, it's hard to say. I mean, it's probably been more of a hindrance because I don't think they really knew what to do with me. But now with this merger, I mean, I found myself on the same label with all these like Sting and Sheryl Crow and everybody, So again, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, because maybe that means I'm just going to get even more lost in the shuffle. But no, it was just, for me, I was just very, very concerned when all that happened that this new record wasn't going to come out, and so I'm just relieved, and hopefully the next one, wherever I end up, if it's not within a scope, I'll have maybe some better luck,
Now, I believe your following is probably stronger outside of Canada than it is within. Anything you can put that down to?
I think basically the biggest reason is lack of radio, and that's true of almost every country. But it isn't that. I mean, it is growing. The last time I toured Canada, I was very pleased with the turnout across the country. It was very, a lot of sold-out shows, and people seem to know the music. But I think all I need to do is spend a little more time here, and I need to try to, maybe do some more television. There isn't really that much to do, here. But it's something that I'm working on. I think my hardest market is the U.S., and that's been kind of frustrating. So I just have to keep going back there and trying to take it further.
One thing that always strikes me about your records is there's a great subtlety in the music on your albums. You don't seem to get bogged down in overproduction. The songs are really left to stand on their own. Is that important to you to maintain that?
It's always been. I always have to keep reminding myself, that the song is really the main thing. Because sometimes I find myself, just like this trip to Australia I'm about to do, I'll be playing solo, and so hopefully the song is going to be strong enough where I can play it without the help of a band or whatever. So that's always important. But this record, I think I was afraid that people would think that we did go overboard, because we brought in strings and horns and everything. But at the bottom of it all, we always start with the song, and we try to pick the ones that we feel are the strongest,
As a listener to music, do you think there is a tendency these days for people to get too bogged down in production?
Well, I guess there's more of I hear in the records that there's people using the studio more like an instrument, which I don't think is bad or anything, but I think there's a lot of that going on, with the sampling and loops and all this kind of stuff. And that's a whole other world for me, I've never been interested in that kind of stuff. And so I don't know if they're overdoing it or what, but just, for my own personal thing is I don't really enjoy being in the studio that long, so I just try to get in there, and every record I've done, we've pretty much recorded live, and I try to sing as good as I can, and not get all sort of picky about everything. So yeah, I don't really know how other people work, but I've tried to keep it simple as possible.
Is the studio environment getting easier for you? Have you found yourself getting a little bit more comfortable there each time?
Yeah, I mean it's helped. It's helped working with Mitchell on 3 albums because, the first record I was a bit stressed out because I didn't want to be the weak link in the chain or anything. And but as we moved on to the third, I found myself being a little more, I don't know, dominant or whatever in the studio, where I would be more vocal about my ideas and this and that, and just more comfortable all around. So yeah, it does get easier, but I still get kind of stressed because, sometimes the song you think is going to be the easiest one to do, you get sort of snagged on and you don't really know why, and So you could spend the whole day trying to get this song right, and so you start to worry that maybe it's not going to happen and everything. And so anyway, yeah, I find it kind of stressful. I'm happy when that's all done, and it's really the performing part that I prefer, I think, and the writing.
Let's talk about your songwriting. Do you have a set criteria that you use in knowing when the song is just right for you, when it's complete?
Sometimes you know, right? And sometimes it's hard to tell, I've had people come up to me and say that, I think your songs, end too abruptly or something like this, And I think that was true of the second album. A lot of the songs just sort of ended, unresolved. And so I was trying to make a conscious effort on this one to resolve them. But I think you just sort of know. And the other way to find out is just by playing them live, and just seeing what the reaction is, and because ultimately people will say things to you. I mean, the last time I was in Australia, we were playing the song "Still Time,"
Mm-hmm.
And we used to have this backing vocal part where the guys were going, sort of like tick-tock sort of thing, And we had an email from Australia asking me that if I record that song, could I please leave that part out, And so we did, because I never know. We just try to, I don't know. We just try to get it done,
What about when programming an album? Say the current album, in terms of song order and which songs to put in, which songs to leave out. Do you have a criteria you work on there?
Yeah, it's just it's really hard to describe what it is exactly, but it's just more. You get just a feel of how it should go, I mean, this was actually the easiest one to sequence, I think, because I guess maybe I had too much time to think about it or something. But I by the time we got out to mix the record, I pretty much had the order that, the way it should go, because I wanted it to kind of move, where the sadder ones were towards the beginning, so it kind of felt like you were this sort of trip, where you kind of come out the other side.
Yeah.
And I knew right away I wanted Still Time to begin, and I wanted Seem to Recall to end it, and but it came together pretty nicely,
You still find yourself drawing inspiration from other writers, even though you're quite an established writer yourself now?
Yeah, I don't think that ever ends, although I am more set in my ways, I think, than I was, on the first record, for example. But yeah, I mean, I hear, like One Grey Morning, for example, is very. I hear a lot of Ray Davies in that one,
Mm-hmm, yes.
And I think Seem to Recall is very, very much influenced by Joni Mitchell. That kind of meandering kind of lyric,
Yep.
So there were things like that I hear, and even Right About Now was my attempt to write kind of like a Bill Withers kind of song. I always loved that sound of Sunshine and all that kind of stuff. But it actually didn't come out sounding like a Bill Withers one at all. It came out sounding more like Lennon doing a Bill Withers song or something like that. But so anyway, yeah, we just. Sometimes the verse is like Leonard Cohen and the chorus is like Harry Nilsson or something, because I've got all these different angles. But ultimately, what you hope for is that it comes out sounding like you.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned Mitchell Froome. You teamed up with Mitchell again to produce the album. What is the key element about his production that works most for you?
Well, I just like seeing him. I trust his judgment, and I'm always excited about his take on the songs, because I'll send him a whole pile of tunes, like maybe 30 songs, and generally he'll come back to me with a list of his favorites, and we're almost always on the same page, and so I think we have a lot in common that way, and I just think he brings a kind of an old school song arranger element to it. There are not too many people these days, not too many producers these days, I don't think, are writing string parts out and horn charts and all this kind of stuff, and that's what he's able to do, and that was really helpful, especially on this record,
I found the use of the strings on the album work quite well. It came across really nicely. Is that something you'd like to pursue more?
Yeah, I think I wanted to do that on the first record even, because I always loved, obviously the backrack stuff, and I love the way Nilsson's records always were very fleshed out. And so, yeah, it's something that if I can afford it, I'd probably love to mess around with it a bit more. But you can go overboard with that stuff too. I think, these songs I had, the chord progression seemed a little more, I don't know, elegant or something, and that strings seemed to complement it more. And I think it was right not to have all that stuff early on, because, it was sort of Mitchell's idea to make the first album more kind of stripped down and simple, and I think that was a good idea.
Did you find yourself in other ways approaching the recording process any different this time around to the other albums?
The only thing that was really different this time was that we spent longer pre-production, because of all the things we wanted to do with strings and horns. We thought it was going to take, an extra week just to sort that out and figure out what we wanted to do. And I think I had more songs too than the last record, so there was that too, just figuring out which ones we wanted to do. So, but other than that, we recorded pretty much the same. We came in, we set up live, and we did all the songs, and it went pretty smoothly. And also he had this Randy Newman album waiting in the wings that he had to do, so we couldn't really drag it on. We had to kind of get right down to work.
Just, if you wouldn't mind, just running through some of the players on the album for us.
Yeah. Well, Brad Jones played bass on this one, just like the last one. We had Pete Thomas on the drums. This was his first time on playing with me. And Mitchell was doing all his keyboards, and I was basically doing all the guitars. And I can't offhand remember all the other players.
Yeah.
There was lots of, extra players brought in.
Now, you mentioned earlier that you do like to road test new songs to gauge some audience reaction. How much did that influence your programming of this set?
It didn't influence too much, because some of them weren't even complete. But I remember on the last tour we were playing Still Time. We were playing The Idiot Boy, I think, or at least I was playing that one by myself. And I think we might have been playing one other one. I think we were doing Right About Now. So a lot of them we were trying out sound check and stuff too. But so it didn't really have a big influence. But maybe 3 of them, we would actually play in the show, and they all seemed to go over pretty well.
Now, talk about your live show. What's the makeup of your live show these days? Is it mostly solo or with a band?
I've been mostly playing with the band, and I was hoping to bring them to Australia, but we've been touring without any tour support from Interscope, so it's been real hard being able to bring a band. So for the Australia dates, everybody thought it would be best if I just came in solo, which I'm fine doing as well, because I did a really, one of my favorite shows of this tour was a solo show that I did in London a few months back, So that's what I've been doing. But for the most part in the States, I had the trio, and which is bass and drums, but the drummer plays cello and the bass player plays accordion, and we try to be versatile. But I think we found a way to put these songs across, without the use of all the other stuff, and again, that's, I think, because I've tried to write songs that are basically chords and lyrics, so I can play them solo or whatever,
Well, in terms of your shows down here, will we be expecting a good cross-section of the material from the 3 albums?
Oh, definitely, yeah. I mean, we never have a set list, so I try to keep it open. So I just try to be fair to each record, and and I don't get down there too often, so I'm sure before I leave, or hopefully I've played everything that anybody wants to hear, So, but yeah, it's pretty open.
You find yourself sometimes when touring in different countries and going from country to country that you find yourself varying your on-stage persona or your on-stage manner? according to the audience?
Yeah, that changes all the time. I mean, I don't know. I mean, sometimes I can't think of anything to say at all. So it'll be like Dylan or something. I'll just play the songs, which I don't. But in general, I try to. I'm pretty relaxed up there, but yeah, the venues change, and it changes from night to night, everything. So the shows vary quite a bit. So I try not to think about it too much. But and the last thing I want to do is be up there telling the same jokes every night and this and that, or doing the same set order. So just to keep it fresh for myself. So yeah, we just kind of walk out there without a script,
And just before we wind up, Ron, what's on your books after you leave us?
Sorry, what was that?
What's on your agenda after you leave Australia?
Oh, after Australia, we head to Europe, and that's where the band meets up with me again. And we got shows in Belgium and Holland and Sweden and all those kind of places. Mm-hmm. And it's picking up for me over there, so I'm looking forward to hitting those places again. You
manage to find time writing when you're on the road?
Yeah, in fact, I've had to force myself to write on the road. Like all the last few albums have been written, basically on the road because I've just had to make use of that time, And I've actually got my whole my next album written, but that was mostly written kind of around the house,
Tremendous. And have you got a time penciled in for the future to sit down and get in the studio with that?
I'm hoping to maybe around January or something. But again, I still don't know where I'm going to be, if that's if I'll still have a record deal or what. So, but I'm planning to. I'd like to have a record out next year, and because everything takes so long, the industry moves so slowly.
Absolutely. Okay, look, Ron, I won't keep you any longer. I want to thank you for 3 wonderful albums to date, and we look forward to many more.
Much. Wow.
Look forward to catching you down here next month. I unfortunately missed you last time you were in town, so I'm really looking forward to these shows.
Yeah, I guess we're doing 2 nights, right? The Continental.
2 at the Continental in Melbourne, 18th and 19th of September, I think, off the top of my head.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it myself.
Oh, we all are. So,
all right. Well, I'll talk to you down there then.
Take care of yourself. Till then, Ron, we'll see you next month.
Great.
All the best.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.